For today, we're going to be digging into a good topic, debt. So those on Facebook, hello. I always like to do this. So Norma, Tim, Dennis, Rick, thanks for joining. And in the comments, thanks for joining as well. We're hoping for the Bengals, right? Amen, right? So that being said, let me talk to you about Harry Truman. Let me tell you a fun story about Harry Truman, not the Harry Truman that was president, but this Harry Truman that lived roughly the same time that our president did. This Harry Truman was born at the turn of the century, of the 1900s, and he lived a great life. He was actually a bootlegger at times. He met a lot of famous people, but eventually he retired on the forested side of Mount St. Helens. And I love this story because it's so intriguing to me. So he lived there, and when he was 80, in 1980, Mount St. Helens started to have some tremors. And so seismologists went there, and they checked out the mountain, and what they started to deduce is that Mount St. Helens wasn't a mountain, it was a dormant volcano becoming active. They talked to the governor of Washington State, and he said, yep, let's start to evacuate, and they did. So when they came to Harry's door, they knocked, and it's Harry Truman and 16 cats, because he lived with 16 cats. And when they came in, they said, hey, the mountain's rumbling. And he said, hey, I know why you're here with your evidence. That's my evidence. There's no smoke coming from that mountaintop. Now get away. And I imagine the cats also were like, meow, like, get away. Well, as the months went on in 1980, the mountains started to shake more and more. Harry refused to leave. In fact, he was becoming a local legend there and a national celebrity. You can go on YouTube and see the New York Times interviewing him on why he wouldn't leave. And he said, hey, here's my evidence. A, that's not a volcano. B, there's a mile of woods between the volcano and me. And if we can go back to that photo, there's a lake that I can get into, and the lava's just going to go into it, so I'll be protected. In fact, in May of 1980, his sister even called and said, you have to leave the mountain. I'm worried about you. And he said, there's nothing wrong with what I'm doing. Some of you know the story and how it ends. May 17th, 1980, Mount St. Helens erupted, shooting ash 80,000 feet into the air with the power of 500 Hiroshima bombs. It blackened the sky from Seattle to New York. It's estimated the mudslide, traveling at 350 miles an hour, impacted Harry's cabin in less than 22 seconds. I start there because it's amazing to me to think how attitude and belief trump evidence, trump action, and sometimes create inaction. I trust everyone looked at the bulletin, not my name, but the fact that we're talking about debt today. And I'm not going to mince words whatsoever. If you want someone to bash you over the head about debt, he's on radio, he's on TV, that's Dave Ramsey, that's not me. I'm Henry Hampton. I too am a financial advisor. I'm on the teaching team, but I walk alongside because I've been in debt. I've been unemployed. I've lived that calendar credit card to credit card, and now I'm through a good majority of that. And so the goal today is to change attitudes and beliefs. In short, when it comes down to things, we either believe that debt is good and we need it, or we are looking for God's providence. We are looking for God's direction in our finances. And this whole series, The Quest, is about finding financial health that honors God. I mean, it's nice that we're starting right at the beginning of the year because we can all benefit from some good ideas. But the concept is to have financial health that honors God, and today's topic is debt. Will you join me in prayer? Dear God, I just lift up the spirits of the people that are here. I am blessed to be able to speak, and I am blessed to be a part of just so much that you're doing here. But this right now, Lord, I know on hearts, they are weighed down. 40-year inflation, 40-year high gas, the reliance on debt. And so, Lord, I just ask that you put protection around those hearts, that we are speaking to them. You are speaking to them in a spirit of a loving father who is living an abundant life that you want for his kids. And you're just trying to get them free from the shackles of debt. Lord, we thank you for this opportunity. We also lift up Mohi, Lord, to think that we can pray about kids halfway around the world, but that shows how big of a God you are. Lord, thank you. It's in your name we pray. Amen. So we've been following the quest. Last week, John Calabrese did a great message kind of kicking us off. And the idea of the quest, the authors take basic financial concepts, and what they do is they kind of connect it to something that we're familiar with. So stewardship was connected to the yellow brick road. Today's talk is, as you can see, the dragon, the debt dragon that we'll be talking about. And I kind of like the personification at debt. I struggled with it a little bit, but I was like, you know what? Let's have some fun with it. So that being said, there's a lot of different dragons that we have in our world. So which dragon do you think our author is going to compare debt to? Pete's dragon, right? The invisible dragon. No, it's going to be smog. It's going to be smog that we compare it to. In case you're not familiar with dragons, dragons throughout literature always guard against something that the main protagonist or hero wants. It's the princess in the tower. It's the gold in Lord of the Rings. Smog invaded a mountain, took the dwarves' gold, and that sets the story for the Hobbit. The other thing of why we compare debt to a dragon is because smog, though you should fear this reptile, was seductive and sly. People were drawn to him in the same way that people are drawn to debt. I appreciate J.R.R. Tolkien writing this. It does not do to leave a dragon out of your calculation if you live near him. Such a great quote that applies to us, because our big idea today is that the debt dragon is real and terribly destructive, but God has proven his victory. We'll see that later on in the service. Be diligent in doing the simple things that are within your power and trusting God to work it out in time. That's the big idea. That's the application. We've set the stage. But you know what? If we as a congregation, Facebook along, if we are going to go tackle a dragon, let's ask the 4 big questions. First off, how big is this dragon we're going to take on, right? Is this dragon good or bad? Is this dragon resourceful to us or not, and can it be tamed? So first things first, let's see how big our debt dragon is. Fun fact, I got to talk about money and taxes Palm Sunday before Easter 2 years ago, because Jesus talked about taxes on Palm Sunday. You can look it up. But for us, at that time, our national debt was $29 trillion. So Brittany, what are we up to now? 31.4. And breaking news Thursday, Janet Yellen, the Treasury Secretary, let all of us know that next Thursday, mark your calendars, we are going to hit our debt ceiling yet again. I know what you're saying. It's January. Yep. So, I mean, that's our country, right? But the people don't make up the country. We're much better handling our debt than our country, right? Brittany, how are we doing on that? Okay. Not so good. In fact, we are moving to all-time highs in credit card debt. I didn't want to pull any punches. This isn't national debt. In case you're curious, our national consumer debt, it is $15 trillion, with 51% of Americans carrying credit card. This is credit card balances. And I'm going to tell you right now, we're going over $1 trillion because Blue Monday is coming up. If you're curious what Blue Monday is, that is when individuals get the credit card statements for what they spent on Christmas. Yeah, it's going to be over $1 trillion, I can almost guarantee you. This is Dave Ramsey. If you are saddened by this, join the club. Kelly and I preached on Saturday, and I said, that seems low, the number I gave. So Saturday, I'm sorry. And then I went to Dave Ramsey, and this is updated totals, so you can kind of compare yourself. Kelly and I did. Like, it's astounding how big this dragon is. And now you can see why LifeSpring is saying, hey, let's talk about it, because why? Because God talks about it. It's estimated, by the way, that 67% will die in debt. Debt impacts marriages. Debt impacts our relationships. Debt impacts our future. Debt is a very big thing that we cover. So with all that said, is the dragon good or bad? It seems like, well, why are you asking that? It's so big. And that would be my argument too. When a dragon's so big, I don't care about its moral compass. I want to know, can we contain it and can we beat it? But being a financial advisor, is debt good or is it bad? All right, so good is when you're investing things that go up. So Bitcoin and NFTs. I'm sorry, that was last year, right? That's the first thing. Things go up, things go down. But the biggest thing that has stayed flat has been housing and education. Investing in real estate, investing in business, investing in your potential to generate more income. But even now I can look out and some of you guys are saying, well, I know someone, which is my point. There's good and there's bad debt. A rule of thumb, though, is that less than 5% in interest rates is manageable and is not high interest. A rule of thumb on housing debt is 25% of your after-tax income is housing. That's not mortgage. That's everything that goes into that. If you're renting, that would include utilities as well. If you're like, Henry, you don't know what my rent is, it's over $1,000, my heart breaks every time I watch CNBC and something comes through on that. I absolutely get you, why we're covering debt. In fact, as I cover, if you're like, Henry, you don't know my situation, here's what I'm nervous about. China's coming back online, right? We had $6 gasoline in summertime. China's going to be using gas as well. They're coming through their COVID lockdowns. What is the next summer going to look like? Sometimes you don't need God to tap you on the shoulder just to say, hey, the mountain's starting to tremble. What are we doing about it? A rule of thumb for educational debt is that it should be equal to your expected salary getting out of school. $200,000 would be reasonable for a doctor. $200,000 for a barista, not so reasonable. Doesn't mean everything's done, but that is the premise. Now, what about all the things, Henry, you didn't mention? There's two questions I would ask. The first question is the purchase going to go up in value? Is the purchase going to go up in value? And then second, is it affordable for your budget? If you're like me and you're starting to rearrange your budget to fit something in, congratulations, you answered number 2. The answer is no. You're like me, you're trying to fit it in. Kelly and I, this year, have gotten more earnest about our debt because my business loan has went from 4% up to 8.5%. That's unacceptable to us. So we have become more intentional about paying down that debt. So is what you purchase going up in value, and is what you purchase affordable for your budget? What does that mean? People are not going to like me here, but I have to say it. Boats, RVs, new cars, timeshares, they lose money. They are not a good investment, and I could argue not good debt. But again, it's more nuanced. Can things be contained? Here would be the two examples I would give. I know someone that bought a car. Cars are very expensive now, I understand that. Bought a car, but they had an interest rate over here of 4%. Car was 2%. They're able to contain it because they put money over here earning 4% to pay their car loan off. As a financial advisor, I kind of come along the goal and the plan. So is the debt contained? Absolutely. Let me give you another example. Just hypothetically, someone is making great income, over $250,000 a year. Her husband is a stay-at-home dad with 2 kids. They just took out a mortgage of $400,000. Is that debt containable? Well, sure, except there's no backup plan for the debt. Term insurance was never bought because no one's ever going to die, even though there's a 2% chance on any given opportunity, any given day. And what happens in that situation is someone winds up on GoFundMe because that debt's not contained, especially when you factor in childcare for a single spouse. And by the way, for those of you that are living, that are single parents, again, I'm amazed in just how much work it takes for Ben. So again, please hear what I'm saying, that when we're talking about debt, the idea is to paint a picture and say, what are we going to do to get out of it? Dave Ramsey says, when you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, that's when things start to come. But my hope is a lot of us can start to move before we even get there. Now, is debt evil? Believe it or not, the Bible does not say it's evil. God would wish people would not take advantage of those in poverty. He wishes that people would not charge high interest. It's been happening for millennia. But God also knows that we make the choices. So he does say this in Proverbs 22:7. The rich rules over the poor, and the borrower is slave to the lender. Proverbs 22:7. and no one who gives pledges who puts up securities for debts. Be not one of those who gives pledges who puts up securities for debt. If you have nothing with which to pay, why should your very bed be taken from you? In short, becoming ensnared in debt happens when we use debt to purchase things like clothes, furniture, or basic items, and a time will come when we lament where we are. That is not God's intention. But before getting into the how-tos and practical steps, I want to do a case study from the Bible, and I love this. If you can open up your phones to 2 Kings 4, 1-7. I'm going to start, but please just continue to have it on your phone because it's so rich. There's going to be 6 points at the end. I went back home and I came up with additional points just because it's such a rich case study. So we're talking with Elisha. He is a prophet of God. That's all you need to know in this subsection of 7 verses. So it says, now the wife of one of the sons of the prophets cried to Elisha, your servant, my husband, is dead, and you know that your servant feared the Lord. But the creditor has come to take my 2 kids to be slaves. Now, we don't know the story. We don't know if maybe the main breadwinner had leveraged his family, thinking that everything would turn out, and then he passed away, and now his family is in debt. We don't know if the main breadwinner passed away, and then the wife, just to make ends meet, put the family in debt. All we know is the dragon is right there to gobble up the kids and the widow. Elisha said to her, what shall I do to you? Tell me, what have you in your house? And she said, your servant has nothing in the house except for a jar of oil. Then he said, go outside, borrow vessels from all your neighbors, empty vessels, and not just a few. And I love that because there's hope already insinuated into the conclusion. Then go in and shut the door behind yourself and your sons and pour into all the vessels. And when one is full, set it aside. So she went from him and shut the door behind herself and her sons. And as she poured, they brought the vessels to her. When the vessels were full, she said to her son, bring me another vessel. And he said to her, there's no more. And the oil stopped flowing. She came out and she told the man of God, go and sell the oil, pay your debts, and you and your sons can live on the rest. What a great case study if, whether you're watching online, whether you're watching on the TVs, or whether you're in here, if you're just nervous about the debt. What a great case study. Let me give you 10 things that just jump out at me. First off, debt causes stress. You're like, no, duh. Notice how the widow was stressed over her debt, but the man of God was stressed over her resources. Instructions were given to the entire family. You got it. Getting out of debt is a family affair. The debt was resolved. It's a simple one, but sometimes we overlook that. God just didn't leave the debt. The debt was resolved. Life without debt was encouraged. Did you catch that at the end? Pay off your debt, and then he didn't say, go back in, start Olive Oil Corp, and leverage everything. He said, pay off the debt and live on the rest. Hebrews says it this way, keep your life free from the love of money and be content with what you have. For he has said, I will never leave you nor forsake you. It'd be great if Christians were content with where they were, so they're not trying to leverage up with the Joneses and watch what God provides. We're left wondering how many jars could have been filled. This is a throw forward to Jesus feeding the 5,000 men, plus women and children, and still having 12 basketfuls of food, all from a 2-piece fish dinner. We serve a God that loves to just be abundant and blessing on his kids. And yet so many of us, myself included, in debt, but yet that doesn't change with God, his abundant living. Notice that God worked within the economy. Go and sell. He just didn't do a miracle, which brings up another point, that God works on choice, not chance. Anyone from Maine just won $1.3 billion? Just joking. Taxes cut out a lot of that. It's like 800. But still, right, that's pretty good money. Well, why don't we win the lottery, Henry? Why doesn't God just vanish our debt? Because why? Because we would learn chance. That I can get all this debt, I can do all this wrong, and then by chance, something good will happen. Whereas God continually works through choice about being intentional with what we do. intentional. Notice that God can do a lot, but he also wants us to do things. Now, on faith, we come as we are, but when it comes to finances, there are things where we will play a part in. Our author says, 1, there is no such thing as a hopeless situation as long as God is on the throne. And 2, God is most likely to do what he can when we are doing what we can. So true. I was left with the question, if we are diligent in doing the simple things that are within your power, our power, what might God be willing to do in response? If we're willing to do just that simple thing, where will God start to open doors? It's funny, I do believe that so many people see chance because they see Christians make the right choices, and then they see opportunities open, and so they think, well, maybe that's just the universe, and it's just chance that happened. When in reality, God is looking at individuals that are following him with their finances and saying, you're doing it in the right position, let me come along even more. But the other side is that God uses money to teach us things. This isn't up on the screen because I didn't want a screen capture of me with this behind it. Proverbs 17:16. Why should a fool have money in his hand to buy wisdom when he has no sense? Why should a fool have money in his hand to buy wisdom when he has no sense? Henry, are you saying I'm a fool? Well, let's back up. No. Is God saying that we do foolish things? Yes. Is 25% on a credit card foolish? It literally will double the payment within 4 years. Yes. If I were to promise 25% in the stock market, I get to go to jail. The only way to get a 25% return on your investment is to own a credit card and charge people 25%. But you know what? How about I say something foolish that I did? Anyone ever lose $25,000? Anyone? All right, I'm going to tell you a quick story, and you're going to think I'm foolish, and I'm not going to judge you. How about that? You can judge me all you want. So here's the story. 2008, I graduated from college. I had a job. I had a nest egg. And I was decent in the market with day trading, buying and selling. But to day trade, you have to have $25,000 as a pattern day trader. So I found a family member to loan me $25,000 as long as I didn't touch it, and then I could, use the $5,000. So in 2008, we all know what was happening, and the market was fluctuating greatly, 1%, 3%, 1%, 3%, because the whole economy felt like it was falling apart. Well, the Emergency Economic Relief Act was being debated, and the market popped up 3%. I made a pretty penny that day. Can I just say that? I just did. And it was going to be voted on at the end of September, and both presidential candidates, if you recall, President Barack Obama and John McCain both signed on to the Economic Stabilization Act. So I thought I couldn't lose. What's the likelihood that Congress would vote that down? So I went all in with my money and also a good chunk of the $25,000. I'm not sure if you remember that Tuesday. I do. Right around 2 o'clock, it came out that Congress voted down that. And in subsequent hours, I saw the market drop 8%. And a dragon that was contained became the largest I've ever seen with glowing red eyes. Even to the point that I understand when it comes to finances, why individuals sometimes think a permanent solution to temporary problems is the right path forward. I had lost a lot of money, but I also lost the respect of my family. Now, over the subsequent months, it was the darkest day of my life. Over the subsequent months, I was able to win back some of it. And by the way, I was straight up gambling. Let's just be honest. Investing is for the long term. That's akin to hunting when it works out. What I was doing was straight up gambling. So we're all on the same page there. And I eventually got back 15 of the 25, and then my family member was like, no, we're good. And so then I had $10,000 more to pay back over the next 5 years. When I did, I felt good. So I get it if you're in debt, if you're struggling. But I also want to point out that was 2008. I got a beautiful kid, great wife, and a great life right now. Permanent solutions to temporary problems negate the fact that God is right there alongside with us. Yes. Should God have given me more money at that opportunity? No, because I was being foolish with it. But through money, we learn how to honor God. So that being said, in the last little bit that we have left, let me give you some tips on subduing the debt dragon. First off, don't bet $25,000 that the government's going to do a smart thing. Just don't do that. Hey, you know what's nice? If you're in debt right now, I pray in a couple of years you can laugh too about some of the mistakes. I seriously do, right? Looking back. Which, by the way, just because online gambling is illegal doesn't mean it's smart. Please don't wager away family. Second, spend less than you make. If you are not doing that, the debt dragon's just waiting to wake up. What your income is needs to be more than your expenses. If expenses are more than income, you're going to eventually run out. You just are. So that's another tip I can give you. Create a spending plan and budget. Why would you do this? You got to give purpose to your money on where it's going. You just have to give purpose, and you need to plug those spending leaks. The best app I have is Every Dollar. This is what Kelly and I use. I like it because it's one login, but her and I can communicate. Ephesians, spouses need to be in one accord. So we use Every Dollar for our finances. Another thing, best practices, is check your credit score. Annualcreditreport.com. This allows you to check your credit report at least once a year from each of the 3 locations. That's annualcreditreport.com. It's estimated, by the way, 20% of credit reports have errors. So if you haven't checked it, congratulations. You're some of the 42% that have not checked it this year or ever, but I would recommend it considering everything is based on that. Do we have Money Canvas? Money Canvas is my recommendation if you are starting and just are trying to get a hold on budget and debt. I realize up in the corner is the T. I don't like to mention the company I'm with, but I will recommend great solutions to issues. Kelly and I went through it, and it did help us. And then at that time I said, I'm an advisor with you, and I appreciate I wasn't sold anything. It's anonymous, it's on Zoom, it's free, and it's 3 meetings. If you want to go supercharge it, you can go to Dave Ramsey. That is now around $80 if you're all in that 8 for basically 9 weeks. If you're looking for good estate planning, then I have to recommend Best Practices CFR, doing a luncheon February 5th right here. I have to recommend that. By the way, did anyone know you can put beneficiaries on your house to keep it from probate? Look at all the money we just saved. I bet you can also learn other things from CFR. 2 slots are gone because Kelly signed us up right now. For the rest of you that are behind, it's right on the back, that QR code. But I would recommend just being wise with legacy planning. Now, obviously, I didn't mention some of the most basic ones because they kind of go without saying. Pray to God, right? Practice self-discipline. Practice self-denial. These should be, though I didn't mention them, they should be some of the foundation for where we're going. And that kind of leads me to the last story I'll share, and the band can come up, is and around Christmas time, I was blessed to be sitting with a client with their family, and he's very good at math. We are all around, and the kids were all around the table, and his 10-year-old said, guess what I learned in school today? And I said, well, what did you learn? And she said, I learned that 1/3 plus 1/5 equals 1/2. And my friend was eating pot roast, and he was just sawing. He's like, nope. And like the wife tried to chime in. She's like, no, they were using felt. And he was like, nope, it doesn't. 1/3, 33%, plus 20% does not equal 50%. So he's really good in math, and I just appreciated that story. So once the kids were to bed, we were talking finances. And he said, Henry, I'm kind of feeling I want to pay off all my debt. And he's a young professional. He's 30. He has a mortgage that we'll all tell our kids about. We had 3% or 4%. He has a great mortgage, too. I said, well, Todd, sometimes there's financial reasons and there's emotional reasons. Some people don't like emotional car payments, so they just want to pay it off. But sometimes it doesn't make sense financially. But what are you thinking? And he said, well, let me stop you. Henry, does it make more sense to live on 90% of my money or 100%? Because I serve a God that says my 90% will outperform their 100%. And in Romans, it tells me not to have any debt except that to Jesus, and that is convicting to me. And I share that because that's the plan we're going to make for him. But I share that for some of you, not to say, Henry, I don't even know if I could be there, one step at a time. We're going to have the prayer team right there. Maybe 2023, you need prayer for slowly getting out of debt or expediently getting out of debt. But imagine if Christians had no debt, the generosity that could be unleashed. We covered a lot of different topics here. We covered a fairy tale dragon, and you might say, Henry, I'm an old school individual. I'm not one for fairy tales. Here's a funny fairy tale. Many Americans, including many Christians, believe that they can be financially independent by paying someone else money they don't have. I will say that again. Many Americans believe they can be financially independent by paying money to someone else that they don't have. That is not God's plan for us. And so as we close, I want you to listen to what God is saying to you, and will you join me in prayer? Dear God, I thank you for the opportunity to talk through finances, through debt, and say what the culture is doing is not guiding us in a way that glorifies you. As this last song concludes, Lord, as we get ready for what you have in store for us, may we remember your words, not just today, not just tonight, but throughout the weeks and the years to come. Amen.